All right, so here's our second set of AP literary terms, and these are a little bit more specific to Greek literature or to the Odyssey in our term, or in our case. So the first one is called in medias res, and because it's in Latin, then we go ahead and italicize that. That's why it's kind of slanted. And all in medias res means into the middle of things. And so this is considered what's called a non-linear plot. That means the author started in the middle of the action. So if you kind of remember, we typically think of the exposition, the rise in action, climax, fall in action, and then your resolution. In medias res, the author might start in the middle of the rise in action. I mean, it kind of starts seriously right in the middle of things. And one of the purposes of authors to do that is it kind of forces the reader right into the action, and it makes them wonder, well, how do we get here? What is going on? It gets you right from the start. And so as a reader, or maybe in the case of a movie, you want to know what's going on before it. So then the author or director, depending on the genre, will go back to, or the medium, will go back to the beginning and give you that background information, and then we'll continue on. For those of you guys who might have seen the movie Fifth Wave does that, where they start in that convenience store, and there's, it looks horrible, like something bad has happened. And we're like, what has happened? Why is she doing this? Why is she stealing the things that she is? And then we have a flashback to how she got there. And then all of a sudden, about maybe an hour into the movie, it might be a little bit less, we're back at that convenience store. Well, we still have an hour left of the movie. Well, then the director continues on. In the Odyssey, the same kind of thing happens. In the Odyssey, he washes up on that shore, and he's telling the story. They're like, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm Odysseus. Let me tell you the story about where I've been." And that's where you get all the stories that you probably are familiar with, like the Lotus Eaters and the Cyclops and Circe and such. And then he's back at the shore, and he says, "Okay, now I just want to go home." And then Homer, our author, brings us into, kind of, we're not in present day, but we go more in tune with him. We go a little bit more chronologically. Then after he tells the story, then he gets to go home, and that's part 2. So it's called in medias res. It's just a different way that an author can do that. Kind of captures the reader at the very beginning. Another term that I want you guys to know is hubris, and you'll see that a lot in our culture, but especially the Greeks like to include that in their hero stories. Hubris is something that we all deal with. It's another term for excessive pride. And it can often lead to the downfall of our hero, because sometimes we just get a little bit full of ourselves, and then we fall flat on our face. And some of the examples that we talked about in class might be a student who says, "I never have to study for a test. I'm so smart. I've got this." And they don't study for a couple of years maybe. You go to all their classes and they breeze through it. So they get kind of an excessive pride going on, their hubris. And then they go to a class and they take their first test and they fail miserably. And they don't know what's going on. And it can really, it can humble you fast. And we've all been part of that. And that's one of the neat things about Greek literature, or about all literature, is it is a universal truth. It's something that we can all kind of relate to. And that's just called hubris. And it's considered a weakness for a hero, because one of the things that we like in a person is when they can admit that they're wrong, admit that there is some fault. So the Greeks would try to use some of these heroes as an example of what not to do. In the case for Odysseus, it's after the Trojan horse, and he goes up to Poseidon and he's like, "I didn't even need you. Did you see that? I solved the war by myself with just my horse, or with the Trojan horse." And Poseidon was like, "Wait a second. If you remember right, I helped you with the sea serpent, and I don't like the fact that you don't think you need us. Without the help of us gods, you would never have won that. So I'm going to punish you. You are going to have a heck of a time going home." And so the gods would punish our heroes for having way too much hubris. And the last term is called xenia. Xenia is it's the concept of hospitality. The Greeks believed that you were going to be hospitable or courteous and kind to whoever would show up at your house. Now, there are a couple of reasons for that. One is, it's the idea of, gods can often disguise themselves. mean, so you got to be careful. You don't know if one of the gods shows up at your house, and then you don't want to tick them off. But more importantly, it was kind of a lesson on just you be kind to others. You're generous and you're kind to others, and so just to be good to other people in your community, and even if you didn't know them, you're expected to practice Xenia. Now, what we've got in the Odyssey is the Cyclops does not show it. And Odysseus he's like, wait a second, you know that you were supposed to help us out. You're supposed to feed us, we're hungry. And the Cyclops, he's like, I don't think so, that is not going to happen. Well, that's kind of a taboo thing to do. You would not do that in that culture. And the Cyclops is considered, kind of a nasty creature anyway, so that would go along with the Greeks saying that, nasty creatures don't practice Xenia. And Odysseus does mention it to him. But probably more importantly for us is Penelope is Odysseus' wife. And when he's out at sea, he's gone for a long time. And there are some suitors who want to marry her. And they're like, okay, look, your husband is gone. He's long gone. So you got to pick one of us, because you need to have a man around here to run this house. And that was just the philosophy at the time. Well, Penelope is not interested in them, but she shows her classiness. She shows how strong of a person she is, and she practices Xenia even though these men are not kind to her. They are not kind to her son. They eat all of her food. They drink all of her wine. They are trashy, and they're not good at all. And yet Penelope takes a deep breath and she continues to do that, not just for like a day or two, for weeks and weeks. And so this is another way that the Greeks would show that even when you don't want to do something, you have to rise above it and practice courtesy to others and hospitality to others. Because, if you want to go back to their culture, think about, all the traveling that they had to do. And so it also would help them out saying, hey, look, this is what we've got in front of us. We have to help each other out. So that was a way that they could kind of teach each other. So those are your terms for set 2.